There were many famous and iconic moments that took place during the Monday Night Wars. ECW was doing some great things that were basically bastardized and prostituted by WWE and WCW. WWE was trying to do some great things at this point in 1997, but were kind of in a goddamn malaise, and WCW was pummeling them into the dirt in what would become a now famous 83-week winning streak in the cable television ratings, and they were doing so many great goddamn things. Even with the pitfalls, not pitfall to mine adventure, all the great things they were doing, the NWO was on the rise, they were building some great superstars, and they thought the NWO was so goddamn great and such a big fucking brand they could have their own pay-per-view. They could host their own pay-per-view. And this was the result. This fucking goddamn pile of motherfucking flaming bullshit was the result. And they thought the NWO was so goddamn hot that they could do great things in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Nothing against Cedar Rapids, Iowa, but really, in a snowstorm, on dump trucks and all that stuff, all the things that they thought the NWO was. Dump trucks and 18-wheelers going 3 miles per hour to open the pay-per-view with black and white and the biggest icon in professional wrestling, Hollywood Hulk Hogan, who hates the Brothers. They thought, Eric Bischoff thought, that this was a good thing to put on pay-per-view. Oh boy, there's so much to say. I'm John Rant with the Retro Review of WCW Sold Out 1997. This is one of the worst pay-per-views of the 90s, by far. This isn't as bad as Heroes of Wrestling. It's not as bad as the UWF Beach for all 1991. It's definitely one of the worst WCW pay-per-views, outside of maybe some of the Jim Herd era, at least the later Jim Herd era, when We Won Flair could not bring Ric Flair back, and they decided to go with Lex Luger and a whole bunch of other stuff, and hey, they had the Ding Dongs in 1990. So many bad things in WCW. But Eric Bischoff had turned the ship around, and they were making big old profits, and then they were gonna go straight on down, and then they sold the company from Turner with a big corporate merger. Thanks AOL Time Warner. I can't finish off this song, so let's move on to the review. So yeah, this pay-per-view was absolute dog shit. There was like one match that actually wasn't all that bad, but if you're unfamiliar with WCW Sold Out, or NWO Sold Out that is, here's the idea. This pay-per-view was so goddamn bad, it was the only NWO pay-per-view that ever existed. The only NWO exclusive pay-per-view. 1998, 1999, and 2000 were WCW NWO Sold Out. That's how bad this pay-per-view was. That's how damaging this pay-per-view was. The concept wasn't even that great in theory, because you're thinking basically, let's backtrack a little bit. This might be a bit of a long review as far as history, but as far as I can remember, as somebody that is a child of, the 80s and into the 90s and remembering the Monday Night Wars somewhat vividly, and then there are things I have to revisit in all three promotions, and even, great things in New Japan Pro Wrestling were happening in the 90s. So much so that there were some great WCW New Japan Super shows with talents like Scott Flash Norton doing really great things in New Japan. Moving on from that, back at Fall Brawl 1996, where Sting had said, "Is that good enough for you right there? Is that good enough for you?" He told him to stick it, and he left. And then the NWO won that, and because of that, because they beat Team WCW, which was a Horseman and Sting, and that is still one of my favorite goddamn moments. That moment will stick out in my mind. Just the crowd roaring, Sting doing that, facing off, the crowd going insane, but Sting realizing, no, I really don't need you guys. I really don't fucking need you guys. Basically, after the NWO won, they were basically going to be able to call their shots. And then it turned out that Eric Bischoff, who basically was running the company at that point, this was right before, I believe, World War III, 1996. He became, the figurehead of the NWO. Okay, fine. He was the heel authority figure, but Vince McMahon will do revisionist history and say, nope, he did it first. Eric Bischoff actually did it first. He did about a year prior. And I would argue for a bit, Eric did it better at first. Vince, of course, became more iconic. He's also been running longer. Now he looks like he's, older than fucking dirt. And probably is. And probably has dirt caked all over his Clay Fighter face. Clay Fighter, Clay Fighter. Vince McMahon is bad Mr. Frosty. Ooh, Clay Fighter. So anyway, this pay-per-view was the brainchild of Eric Bischoff. And they had a cool stage and everything. They had the light up stage. It was kind of like, it was kind of a throwback and everything. It wasn't all that bad. That was kind of cool. But then we get to the actual pay-per-view presentation. where, yes, as I said in the intro, in fact, you know what? I need to prepare myself for this pay-per-view. There we go. That should goddamn, ow. That should do it. Still doesn't hurt as much as this pay-per-view did. So, yeah, there's dump trucks with NWO flags, 18-wheelers with NWO flags, and this is in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which I'm not that familiar with, but I would imagine Iowa probably gets quite a bit of snow. And I would imagine, surrounding states there get quite a bit of snow. And they thought it was a good idea for, and so goddamn revolutionary and against the grain, they thought it was a good thing for these vehicles to be going 3 miles an hour. If they were going any slower, they would have been going backwards. They wouldn't have even needed to go in reverse. This was so goddamn ridiculous, and that just the fluffing of the egos and all that. And look, yes, the NWO revolutionary concept. I own this sweet shirt for a reason. I actually used to own the WCW original, and then it just got to the point where it got so goddamn tattered and whatever that I had to buy, the WWE version. And that's a shame, but still, I love the group. That, that whole thing, I can't even, I sound like a goddamn quacking duck as opposed to a, a quacking gorilla trying to do that music. But the NWO was great. From the formation at Bash at the Beach 1996, when Hogan told us how he felt some many years before we found out from that leaked audio, if it wasn't for Hulk Hogan, you people wouldn't be here. Oh, he was telling us all those years ago. And the NWO continued to rise up and do some great stuff. And yes, it did get, the beatdowns and all the stuff did get eventually a little bit annoying, and they wanted somebody to rise up. There were crowds, people in the crowd chanting, "We want Sting, we want Sting." But all this is going on. They're doing all this stuff and getting into the arena. And they're at the Five Seasons Center, which I'm not that familiar with necessarily because I don't know much about Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Probably couldn't find it even if I was given, GPS. And also, considering I live in Washington State, it would take me quite a while to get to Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Because I'd actually have to have a reason to go to Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Sorry, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Sorry, Iowa. But, I just don't understand why they thought this was a good idea. It should have been Detroit, Michigan. It should have been in Atlanta. I'm not saying that Cedar Rapids shouldn't have gotten a pay-per-view. It just shouldn't have been this. The seating capacity apparently is around 9,000. There were 5,120 fans. Now, sure, maybe they just had at half capacity, had the stage up and everything, and just, tried to have it full. But I cannot imagine that too many proper wrestling fans are watching this show. And I'm going to give you an example why. One of the worst fucking crowds that I have seen at a major wrestling show in the 90s. They didn't give a shit about at least 80% of this show. They were assing off. They were just, I guess, having a blast. Half of them were probably goddamn drunk. And I think people putting the show together were drunk. Because it's also had the misfortune of having the infamous, catastrophically horrific, horrifying, every kind of, goddamn horror, horrible word you can come up with. Really got to be careful doing that. Miss NWO contest, because Eric Bischoff is a biker. They had some bikers there. They had the women. And nothing against women that do biking. Nothing against anybody that does biking or whatever, or rides Harley. You do whatever the fuck you want. I don't care. But they thought this was a good idea to do this. Let's vote on who Miss NWO will be. They had this guy as this host. One of the worst goddamn television personalities I've seen. I don't know who the hell that guy was. I don't know who he was. I don't care who he was. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but it was terrible. And none of these women wanted to be there. You go and watch this pay-per-view if you can stomach it. And if you can, you're certainly better than me. And I watched this live at the time and watched it again. I watched it again subsequently a few times. And I always find different things to, knock and pick on and just rant about and everything. And this, the stage, again, was kind of cool. But you have all these bikers, all this stuff. You have Eric Bischoff and Ted DiBiase seemingly standing up doing commentary the whole night, which must have been so goddamn good. Must have been just so much fucking fun. They had like this monitor, this weird stuff set up. It didn't even look like they knew how to fucking set this thing up at all. Eric Bischoff had a goddamn, podium, with microphones and everything. They were doing this whole big setup and this, it's like, what were you guys thinking? Was one of the, the line to close that whole goddamn thing. WCW showing up. What were you guys thinking? I think that everybody was asking that by the time this pay-per-view was past the first match. Probably past pretty much even the first introduction. They did have, Nick Patrick as the lone referee, except for one match. And Nick Patrick actually, I think, was the best. It did the best he could. He was a former wrestler, suffered an injury, and was a referee for a while, and then I think had like some kind of back injury or something that knocked him out of wrestling. Now he has nothing to do with wrestling, but he actually was a pretty good referee. And the whole heel referee thing, I mean, Danny Davis did it, and a whole bunch of, like, they've done that stuff before. Danny Davis probably is the more famous one, given the big stage. And Bischoff's mic wouldn't work on that podium. So even if, everybody, even if there were, like, about 10 people around him about 2 feet from him, they probably still couldn't have heard him. Because nobody piped in the music correctly, so the music was drowning everything out. And the ring announcer was over the loudspeaker, or it's Echo the dumb shit, as I'm going to call him, not Echo the Dolphin. Echo the Dumpling is what I thought of calling him, but I don't know. Maybe he doesn't like dumplings. I don't mind dumplings. I never saw that movie Dumpling. So, yeah, if you've noticed, I have not really gotten to any analysis of the matches, because a lot of the matches were goddamn shit. So, yeah, a ton of biker babes, in quotations. They weren't my cup of tea. They also didn't look like they wanted to be there. They also looked like they probably could have beaten the shit out of Bischoff and DiBiase, especially DiBiase at that state of his career and his life. Masahiro Chono, one of the best in New Japan. One of the pillars of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Took on Chris Jericho. Now, you're thinking in 1997, this might not be a bad idea. So they did have that Echo the dumb shit guy, as I'm calling him, and he kept, and that no WCW people got music. He had the guy over the PA doing the intros and would do loser, do, new world order. He would just do that. So anyway, during this match, Harlem Heat, Arn Anderson, Kevin Sullivan, Mongo, Deborah, and the Faces of Fear show up. All they needed was Ming. Seriously, Ming could have taken out everybody in the goddamn crowd. And considering half that crowd looked like they were all inbred, sorry, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, not saying that you guys are, but saying this crowd was, yeah, Ming was pretty much all they needed. All you need is love, and love is all you need. And all you need is Ming. Well, screwed that up. So, Bischoff was saying, this is sold out, not, like giving tickets away to a show at your local YMCA. WWE was struggling to give away tickets. Read up on the 1997 Royal Rumble, easy for me to say, from the same goddamn month. And they were in the Alamo Dome. I understand Mil Mascaras really remembers the Alamo. I reviewed that last year if you want to check it out. And they had to offer $5 tickets basically just to fill up the goddamn thing because Vince wanted to have a big old stadium show when they shouldn't have been running a big stadium show at that point. And a couple of years later, they couldn't, they couldn't, get, sell tickets fast enough. They really couldn't. They couldn't keep tickets. They were just basically just selling out like crazy. Now, at this point, WCW was doing pretty well, despite the fact I basically mentioned it was like half capacity. And then by, mid-98 or whatever, yeah, they were selling out some venues, and then they were giving away free tickets. I mean, remember when DX invaded Nitro, they actually shot the thing, I think it was at the Norfolk Scope. Proud tradition of Jim Crockett Promotion cities. And they had the thing, free tickets, you can get free admission. I know they were doing that for the television tapings, they were doing that for a whole bunch of stuff, They were doing that, and that's been happening for a while. A lot of TV tapings, a lot of whatever, would get the free tickets or the cheap tickets just to get an audience in there. This is when WCW was at its height, and I'm amazed that this pay-per-view did not just halt their momentum. And fans were getting really tired of the NWO stuff at this point. They were chanting USA at Chono, because Iowa. Sorry, Iowa. And there were the slow counts. The crowd was booing every time Nick Patrick made a slow count. At least he didn't make a slow count at Starrcade 1997. Oh, he did. He made a regular count. Because Hogan got in his ear or something. But Sting wasn't tan enough. I will never forgive them for screwing up Starrcade 1997. Oh, sure, they had big business in 1998. Then look what happened by the end of 98. They killed the golden goose that was Bill Goldberg. And that was it. So later we get a table bump. Because, by the way, Chono pulls the table out. DiBiase says, it's not sushi time yet. Boy, some things haven't aged all that well. And then he hits a Mafia kick, the big boot, 1, 2, 3. The sad thing is this match actually probably wouldn't have been all that bad, except, sold out. So we get more shots at the Biker Bays. Boring chants. This crowd was pissed already. We are 20 minutes into the show. I don't know who this MC was. I just know that he should have never been allowed on television again. So, the NWO contest, they thought this was pay-per-view worthy. This ate up about 30 minutes of the pay-per-view, at least. And the pay-per-view was only like 2 hours and 40 minutes. 30 minutes, collectively, of all these segments. With the last one taking the longest. They could have put another match on at this point. They could have had another NWO member. They could have had a multi-man match or something. Anything would have been better than this Miss NWO contest. And then we had, but maybe what wasn't going to be better is Big Bubba Rogers versus Hugh Morris with Jimmy Hart. I like Jimmy Hart. These guys were going to have a Mexican death match. Okay, why? Why? By the way, the rules were never really explained. They just were going to have a Mexican death match, and basically the idea is whoever's in the ring after a 10 count wins. Because fuck it. Because WCW is just going to piss fans off. And boy, did they piss fans off about 2 years later. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Just under 2 years later. That'll put butts in seats. Poor Shivani. Poor Shivani. So this big man trying to do shit. The crowd does cheer for something. Something seemingly off in the middle distance. Anything was probably more interesting than this card at this point. Loaded chain punch, and then no sold by commentary. The lamest chain whips that I've seen this side of, well, you know what? I'm just going to leave that alone. At least it's not, in the dirty, dirty South. So, they did pop for the moonsault. That was kind of cool. We go to the stage. Hugh Morris tries to do No Laughing Matter, the moonsault that he does. Misses it. Totally fucking misses it, by doing that off the stairs. And then Bubba gets on a motorcycle and hits Hugh Morris in a somewhat impressive bump. I mean, it was really hard to get up any momentum, but Morris did the best he could. And then would go on to abuse a lot of people in the WWE developmental system. But would always get defended by people like Chris Jericho, idiot. And, yeah, so count out and Hugh Morris won, or Hugh Morris lost. You know what? Hugh Morris could have won, honestly. I don't think it really would have mattered at this point. Anyway, more NWO stuff. Why? None of these women wanted to be there is what I noted again. Jeff Jarrett versus Mr. Wall Street. Mr. Wall Street, by the way, is Mike Rotunda, who was part of the U.S. Express with Barry Windham, born in the USA. They were the tag team champions. They lost to the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. And he was Mike Rotunda, part of the Varsity Club. Great match at Starrcade 1988 for the TV Championship against Rick Steiner, and he was a great singles wrestler, great tag wrestler. Captain Mike Rotunda was less good, and then he would go on to be IRS and WWE for a while, and then would become VK Wall Street, Vincent Kennedy Wall Street, get it, and then would become Mr. Wall Street. They thought this match was a good idea to put on pay-per-view in 1997. Nothing against either of these guys, but with the presentation that Jeff Jarrett had at that point, with the suspenders, constant suspenders, so many suspenders. The suspense is killing me. And the fact that Mike Rotunda was not nearly the performer that he was even about 4 years prior. This wouldn't even been worthy of Nitro. And Nitro at this point was 2 hours, and they were going to be adding Thunder a year after this. The crowd checked out. Deborah was trying to get Mongo to help Jarrett because, they were having this uneasy alliance thing and everything. Jarrett does go over the guardrail in a pretty good bump at one point, I noted. And lots of rest holds. Patrick kept, he pulled Wall Street to the ropes to get him out of the figure four and everything. And then finally, Deborah manages to get Mongo with the briefcase. He hits Wall Street on the back with it. And then forces Nick Patrick, by holding it over his head like he was going to beat him with it, to count to 3. And then Nick Patrick actually did a fast count here. God, if only he could have about 11 months later. Whew. Goddamn, more Miss NWO contest stuff. This won't fucking end. American male loser is what the announcer said about Scotty Riggs. I like Scotty Riggs. I thought Scotty Riggs was pretty damn good talent. I mean, I'm sure he's still a good person. I don't think he still wrestles. If he does, good for him. Took on Buff Bagwell. American males, American males, American males, American males explode. Riggs wanted revenge. Buff stalled a lot. And then we got a lot of posing. We got a crossbody where Buff hit hard on the outside. That looked rough. And then this was not 14 minutes of pay-per-view airtime worthy. And that's nothing against these guys. But with how this card was, this would have been better off at about maybe 9 minutes, and they probably could have cut out some of the fluff. Because Riggs and Bagwell at least with the right people could work. Riggs could work better with most people. Bagwell was better in tag teams, but kept shouting loser over the PA is what somebody kept doing. Buff's ass got exposed in an attempted sunset flip. That was the cheers. Tornado DDT by Riggs. And then Bagwell busts out the Buff Blockbuster. All this time, by the way, they were switching between a regular camera view, a post-camera view, like the referee cam. Remember when they did that in I think it was 91 in WCW, and I think it still continued in 1992, at least until Bill Watts got there. The whole referee thing, and he had the helmet. That's kind of what the view was like. It was like bad home video footage or whatever, or like home videos that I saw online once by mistake. Always delete search history. So, yeah, this was the debut of the Blockbuster. That actually was pretty impressive. It required people to stand around there like drunk, bumbling idiots, so they fit perfectly in Cedar Rapids. I'm sorry, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. But yeah, he got the victory. Good. Okay, whatever. Let's move on. My God, more Miss NWO contest stuff. The MC, drunk goddamn idiot, again, who I'm sure is a nice guy, Vince, head of security for the NWO, is known to wear cheap suits and a hairpiece. Okay, we get it, Bischoff. You hate Vince. Scott Norton took on DDP in a match that probably should have been a lot better than it was, and I love Norton. Norton actually was very, very good, and I'm going to say that Scott Norton is awesome, because I don't want Scott Norton, that big wall of brick meat, to destroy me. But actually, Scott Norton was really good in New Japan, not presented that well in WCW, because he was a bigger star in Japan. Sting was in the rafters to a cheer. Massive cheers, actually. Buff shows up along with others to get him to join the NWO. While the match is still going on, by the way, we had a match, and then they said, hey, we know it didn't work in the New Orleans Superdome a couple weeks ago when you pretended to be part of it, and then Diamond cut Hall, but we trust you this time. And then he Diamond cut everybody, and then he just Diamond cuts literally everybody, just destroys everybody, and then leaves. And that's it. So actually, I think he just Diamond cuts somebody, beat a couple people, and then left through the crowd. So then, Norton wins by count out, according to Nick Patrick. This guy is as dumb as a bag of dirt, or dumber than a bag of dirt, is what Bischoff actually said. I'm not sure how a bag of dirt could be anything but dumb because it's a bag of dirt. It's not a sentient being. So, my God, the Miss NWO contest. The Outsiders took on the Steiners in WCW tag title match. Lesson 1, never anger the goddamn Steiners. Also, note number 2, it's funny that Scott Steiner returned on Rick Steiner after this. Well, actually about 13 months after this. Harlem Heat were there to watch on, and Rick got targeted. The crowd they were interested in something else. Again, I guess there were fights, because it's Cedar Rapids, Iowa. What the fuck else are you going to do but fight? Maybe fight your first cousin because they slept with your second cousin and you called dibs. I am being so mean to Cedar Rapids, Iowa that everybody in Cedar Rapids, Iowa that watches my channel, all 3 of you, will be upset. I live in a town that's pretty goddamn stupid too, to be fair. So, the referee got knocked down later in the match. And then we got Steiner Bulldog on Hall, and then Randy Anderson, who was a non-sanctioned referee for this match, but was a WCW sanctioned referee, but this is an NWO pay-per-view, counts to pin the Steiners win the tag titles. Bischoff and by the way, the crowd popped. Bischoff and DiBiase were upset. Hall and Nash would get the tag titles the next night. They would get returned to them, and Randy Anderson would be fired, and then Eric Bischoff would be suspended a little bit later. And they would try to take some power back because they realized it was a runaway train, and the fans were, even though the ratings are rising up, there were some great goddamn ratings in 97. And WWE was rising up, and WCW and WWE in 98 especially would go up and up and up, even though after it was the April 13th, 1998 episode of Raw that would finally beat Nitro after nearly 2 years, and they would trade ratings victories back and forth for the next 6.5 months. Until the Nitro after Halloween Havoc 1998, when the pay-per-view got cut off and they had to show Goldberg versus DDP in the main event because Hogan versus Warrior had to go about 20 fucking years. By the way, once again, fuck the Ultimate Warrior. I'm glad he's dead. So, yeah, they would get the titles back the next night. Okay, so this is something that was said by the PA guy about Eddie Guerrero. This was said by the PA guy. I am saying this because this was said by somebody else. This is Mexican Jumping Bean Eddie Guerrero. This was said on a pay-per-view. They thought this was a good idea. Yikes. Fucking yikes. Eddie Guerrero versus Syxx in a ladder match for the U.S. Championship. By the way, Eddie was the U.S. champion at this point. Syxx, wait, I think Eddie was a U.S. champion. Because I know that Ric Flair was. And then he had to relinquish it because he had a shoulder injury. And I believe Eddie was a U.S. champion. And then Syxx stole it. I'm going to say right now, X-Pac, and nothing against X-Pac. Sean Waltman, whatever you want to go, 1, 2, 3 kid, Lightning Kid, all that, whatever you want to call him. I feel bad for the guy because you could totally tell throughout his entire WCW run he was not in the right frame of mind at all. He was not in a good place. This was a prime example. The match was good, don't get me wrong, but you could just tell looking at him, like, just the stuff they had him do, it just wasn't good. Finally, something good. This match had no right being, A, as good as it was, given the state of the card, and B, had no right being on this card, given the state of this fucking card. So, we do get some dives and some decent psychology. We get a suplex to the outside by Syxx. Ladder came into play. We get Eddie chance. So, ladder match, by the way, where you can use the ladder as a weapon, or in the case of Rich Brennan, use the weapon as a ladder. But this was 18 years before that. 18 and a half years, to be exact. Let's stop talking about that event, which was good. The ladder is not meant to be used as a weapon, says Eric Bischoff. Eric Bischoff forgot how match stipulations work. And then both these men take some hard bumps while Bischoff mentions how Scott Hall, revolutionized and invented the ladder match. Actually made the ladder match famous, which would be revolutionizing. So they both tumble, off the ladder a few times. And the title was up, there where they had to, whoever gets possession of it is the U.S. champion. And then Eddie and Syxx would tumble off. And Syxx should have had the title, but he fell down and everything and was just knocked out. And Eddie grabs the title and is declared the winner. And Nick Patrick is suddenly okay with this. Even, Eddie earned that and everything and whatever. And the announcers finally, I think, just gave up and said, okay, this isn't working. As opposed to the rest of the card that was working. And the finals of the Miss NWO contest, finally, thank fucking Christ. It hasn't ended to this point, so why not continue it to the point where it just is driven like nails into our goddamn skulls? It's like bad acupuncture. It's like where our brain is being acupunctured and deflated, and yet we still have more brain power than whoever put this fucking show together. This took forever. Bischoff ends up kissing the winner. I don't know who the hell it was. I don't care. Whoever put this goddamn Miss NWO contest together deserves to be set on fire in front of their family. So, some lady won. Yeah, but anyway, Bischoff talks up Hogan while Hogan gets pyro and the entrance of the PWA, or the PWA, the Pro Wrestling Association. I'm actually surprised that the Pro Wrestling Association doesn't exist. I should win the Powerball. I should win the Powerball jackpot and start that. And start a wrestling promotion with blackjack and hookers. Maybe not that. But anyway, the Blackjack Brawl didn't work out all that well. But Herb Abrams got the MGM Grand with 300 people in it. In a 17,000-seat arena. Let's hear it for Herb. Anyway, so some Dallas Cowboys players were with Hogan in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Weren't the Cowboys the Cowboys weren't in the Super Bowl in 97. I think they said it was the Patriots and the Packers. This was before the Patriots, by the way, would become the big winning franchise that they were for so many goddamn years. Even though the Cowboys were pretty goddamn dominant in the 90s. So, Hogan's entrance takes about 14,000 fucking years. Okay, so Giant versus Hogan for the WCW Championship. It wasn't as bad as Halloween Havoc 95. It wasn't as bad as Hog Wild 96. Actually, Hog Wild 96 was actually in front of a better crowd. Yes, the Sturgis events had a better crowd than Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Congratulations, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. You're worse than Sturgis. My God, what does Cedar Rapids, Iowa do to me? So, there were Giant chants. The Giant does miss an elbow at one point. That's impressive. The Big Show was able to do, well, the future Big Show, and now the current Paul White, who apparently has just vanished. He's not anywhere on programming anymore. Big Show, sorry. Let me try that again. Giant ends up, no-selling, hits a choke slam. He no-sells a leg drop. Hits a choke slam. Nick Patrick refused to count to 3, so the trash was getting thrown around the ring at this point. Nick Patrick gets laid out. Everybody gets laid out. The crowd was pissed. The crowd got choke slammed, if only. Everybody gets choke slammed, and then Bischoff hands Hogan a guitar full of white powder. Let's hear it for Herb Abrams, who died about 6 months before. And we want Sting chants. This was a no contest, by the way. Never an actual finish, just a no contest. We want Sting chants. They would get Sting at, I believe it was Uncensored 97 at the end. After this, go watch Uncensored 97 and watch the end of that, where he's right there. Hall runs in the first bat shot. It is like the crowd that was throbbing adulation all over the place. Anyway, yeah, this pay-per-view was absolutely one of the worst goddamn things that I've seen in the 90s, easily. It is one of the top 10 worst WCW pay-per-views ever. It's just atrocious. This is when they were at their height, and they put on a pay-per-view like this. I'm not saying WWE was putting on great pay-per-views, and hell, even ECW's pay-per-views, well, actually, ECW didn't do a pay-per-view until Barely Legal 97, which actually was pretty good. And some of their pay-per-views were better than this, even though they were wild out of control and everything. But WCW somehow survived this and didn't cook their goose until about a year or so later. Anyway, agree, disagree, what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.